Okay, 2002 D9 V6 406 Peugeot. Same engine as was in Citroen and Renaults of the era. Great engine. This one's got about 160,000 kilometres on it, but of course 21 years old, and it has a perennial oil leak issue. So the engine was put together, alloy block, alloy head, alloy cam boxes, put together using seals rather than gaskets, and eventually they start to leak, seals harden, and you end up with oil leaking, engine oil leaking onto the exhaust manifolds, and also just about out of every other orifice. With this one, the crankshaft and camshaft seals are still tight. Recently pulled off the cam belt and put a new one on, and it was dry in that area, although the oil leaking out of the rear exhaust cam box cover was entering via the back, entering and coming out the back of the timing case, timing belt and crankshaft pulley case, which made it look like it could have had a crankshaft oil seal leak, but wasn't the case. I've done both exhaust cam box covers, had a fail on one, had another go at it using Loctite MAXX Ultra, which is the recommended RTV anaerobic silicon seal. It's absolutely critical that you get the surfaces clean, perfectly clean and dry. So I've just done the sump on this, and just a couple of tips that might help anyone that's endeavouring to do this job. I know there's a bit of stuff on doing cam box covers already out there on the free web. So we'll go ahead and jack the car up. The beauty of the Pugs is that they've got a pretty rigid body, so if you jack up the front, it will lift the rear off the ground as well, and you can simultaneously put your car stand underneath the back mount. I like to pop the front stand underneath the body mount, the round body mount there, so that that subframe is well supported. So that ensures the car's level, front and back, and you've got about 300 mil or a foot underneath to work with for removing the sump and checking for any oil leaks underneath. Okay, so this is the original seal that had given up the ghost and was leaking, just seeping oil all around the pan. Of course, then it gets blown everywhere and tends to drip. Now that's a silicon of some kind, and it's about 4 millimeters wide and about 1.5 millimeters deep. So these are the two products that were recommended to me anyway. The Permatex Ultra Black gasket maker 82180, high flexibility and oil resistance, silicon RDV, suitable of course for oil pans, and of course you've got an incremental hole size on the nozzle. I cut it back to the second one, I think it was, which gives about a 3 to 4 millimeter bead. And of course the secret, apart from having perfectly flat, clean, damage-free surfaces, is to get a nice even bead run without stopping and starting, and that is pretty tricky. I've got pretty big strong hands, and I find these guys are really hard to squeeze continuously. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes to get all the way around if you're doing a nice steady bead. There are applicators, but not for the smaller tubes from what I've seen. The other product which is suitable is the Loctite Black, which is SI598. Similar tube, similar stuff, similar specifications, similar price, and similar delivery technique. So if we look at the sump, you'll notice that we've got aluminium block, and of course that's a flat machine surface, and you've got a pressed steel pan with a raised edge, and that makes it relatively easy to follow in order to put the bead down. So I found it easier to put the silicone, run the silicone around the pan, and then put it in position and bolt it up. The big issue I had was allowing the oil to drain out of the block long enough. In fact, I went away for a week, drained the oil and just left it sit up while the car was level, so that all the oil drained out. Otherwise, what happens, you can clean the surface as many times as you like on the block, but the oil seeps down and around, and these RTV silicons take 24 hours to set. So I found the first time I did it, laid down a perfect bead, put it together, torqued it up, and the oil had seeped down before the silicon cured and had compromised the surface contact between the silicon and the alloy block. So when I put the oil in and started up, it just leaked out puddles of oil. It was a total failure. So really, really important that you let the oil drain out of the block first so that you can get a really clean, dry surface. I used brake cleaner on all the surfaces, and made sure that it was absolutely meticulously clean, but also made sure it was dry, because you don't want fresh brake cleaner on there. Even though it evaporates fairly fast, it'll leave residue if you're not careful, which I think can probably also compromise your silicon. This time, so far, it's as tight as can be. You'll notice I've got a different stud in there. Very easy to strip the studs. They're only a 6mm M6 by 1 thread into the alloy, and then only 15. I've only got about 14 or 15mm of thread on them. So don't be tempted to use the rattle gun to put them in. Take your time. Start them with your fingers first, so you know you're not double crossing the thread, because the last thing you want to do is to strip the thread and have to helicoil. Not a good thing. So all the best with that. Okay, so there's 20 studs, and the tightening sequence is a 2-stage crisscross or spiraled pattern in 2 stages. The first one is 5 Newton meters, and the second and final is 8 Newton meters.